And good evening, everybody, and welcome to Going Nuclear, full-blown coverage of the land. I am Ethan Greenberg, and joining me tonight, special guest from the Prospects of the Land, Believe Land Media, Taven McCulley. Taven, thank you for joining me once again. How are you this evening?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm doing good. Hopefully, Guardians not really playing for much, but still got to pull out the win, stay hot. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is great for us to have something good to discuss in Cleveland sports right now because, quite frankly, and we'll get to this a little later, the Browns certainly are not a joy to discuss at this juncture. It's more turmoil and craziness and drama, and it's just rather upsetting. I don't know about you. I mean, we just well, we'll get to this. We'll get back to this, but I did want to just ask because you're in school, right? And I'm trying to think back to my days. But do you go in on a Monday? Now you have an affinity for the Giants because of Eli Manning, as you told me. But on any other given week, if you go in and the Browns have lost, do you have friends that are also kind of bemoaning the loss as well as you?
my school's weird, and I think it's everybody my age because the Browns have not been the greatest since we've kind of been watching football. So you got everything from Patriots fans to Dolphins fans to Ravens, just everywhere. So not people aren't as really kind of mad about the Browns because
Okay.
it's really spread out with kind of fans. A lot of Cincy fans too, which is weird.
Okay, so basically you've got a bunch of bandwagon fans.
Steelers, yeah, it's a lot of everything. Cowboys, yeah,
Okay, yeah. So they kind of probably root for players or they're bandwagon fans, and their parents have done a terrible job. That's
pretty
all I'm
much,
going with.
yeah.
Yeah, they've done an awful job. I mean, you think I'm down here in Richmond, Virginia, in Commander country, and I'm going to let my son be a Commander fan? Hell no. So with that in mind, so Taven, again, thank you very much for joining us. For those of you wondering, co-host Mike Rasinski, he is out of the country on work assignment, so we will see him back next week. So you are covering right now, as part of your work for Believe Land Media. You are covering a lot of high school football right now down there up there in Stark County. Down there, I am familiar with that as a Glen Oak grad. Um, how has that been? What's some of the best you've seen, worst you've seen, best teams out there?
So covering a lot of Perry, obviously that's where I go to. So like to get a lot of those games in. But I've done a Glen Oak game, Jackson game, just watched McKinley play. Glen Oak is I would say by far the worst team in the Feds.
Oh
They're
yeah,
pretty
go.
rough. Only
Oh,
only
oh,
only have scored 13 offensive points and one touchdown on the season.
how many games? Three or four?
Five. Five.
Oh, woof. Okay,
Yeah.
well, you know what? I can top it. My son's high school team, they lost 81-7 in week 2 and
Jeez.
79-0 in week 3. They were searching for players or additional players to just to fill out the roster as of like a week before school started. So yeah. So Glen Oak is by comparison, they're tremendous. 13.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa, all right, there we go. No, so no, but I mean, back in the day, when I was in high school, when your dad was in high school, McKinley wasn't part of the Federal League. But McKinley and Maslin were in a class of their own. And you would have good teams in the Federal League. Perry was always consistent. Jackson was very tough. And every once in a while, at least through the mid to late 90s, Glen Oak would have a surprising team every once in a while. And then, somebody would do something dumb and get kicked out of a game before and yeah, that's a long story. Anyway, no, so you've seen a lot of Perry. Who's on top of the Federal League right now?
So I want to say it's still Lake and
Okay.
Green. They're both, I think, 4-1.
Wow. And Lake and Green, they have built very successful programs. As far back again, to my time in high school, they've been excellent. And Green, it wasn't that long ago they joined the Federal League. They had built themselves up there in the early 2000s, kind of making waves, getting into the playoffs. What do you recall what conference they came from before the Federal League?
I have no clue.
Yeah, I
But
can't remember, but go ahead.
yeah, I mean they've been pretty solid. You have Lake, who's 4-1. Perry, shockingly, is 3-2, which I would take that as a success because coach isn't the greatest with the play calls. So quarterbacks pretty inconsistent. He can run the ball good, but through the air, which it totally isn't on him, but it has a lot to do with the coach's play calls. Like on 3rd and 10, he'll draw up this like QB run up the middle. It's like, dude, what are you doing? But they're pretty solid from what I've seen. Almost beat Warren Harding too, so almost 4-1.
Well, a lot more and nowadays there's a much greater chance of making the state playoffs. They opened it up a lot.
Oh
And
yeah, I
so
think we got in with like 3 wins one year or
right.
something crazy.
You can basically be terrible. Everybody gets the participation trophy nowadays.
Yeah.
Uh, and so the meaning of getting into the playoffs isn't the same as what it once was. So with that being said, did you catch the big game? I think the big game, or around Northeast Ohio, was the Massillon St. Ed's game. Did you happen to catch any highlights of that? Is anybody going to challenge Massillon and or St. Ed's from Northeast Ohio or around the state as they try to repeat as state champions in each of their respective divisions?
So I obviously those are probably the best two teams in um high school football, at least D2, in my opinion. I'm trying to look at Avon because I forget what division they are, but I know that they're really good. They're 5-0, obviously. Beat McKinley, so
What is
trying to.
McKinley like these days? Are they because there was a time when they were dominating Massillon and they were a juggernaut. Um, but what are they now?
So McKinley, they're a solid team. They got a lot of weapons. When we played them, they beat us 38-7, I want to believe. And I think everybody on that team, other than one of the receivers who I interviewed after the game, he was the only one with 2 touchdowns. So they spread the ball out a lot. They have a lot of different weapons. Good running back in Jamar Johnson. So they're powerhouse. They got a good defense with 2 kids that are committed to D1 colleges, one Missouri, and I want to say Dior Gardner's committed to some team in the MAC, but obviously that's still pretty good.
Yeah, it really is. A lot of people, there was a lot of conversation going on about the MAC schools taking on schools like Ohio State, Michigan, other Big Ten opponents, right? And I saw an argument talking about to the extent of you've got these guys. Why don't you send some high schoolers out there against them? I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not that these players aren't as big, right? It's more so that they're not as skilled and they've got deficiencies in their game. And that's why they're not playing in the Big Ten. That's why they're not playing in the SEC or the Big 12 or whatever. That's why they're at the MAC. That's why they're in the Sun Belt Conference or wherever it is. They're just not as fine and polished players for whatever reason. The scouts are looking and saying this is not enough. So that's cool that McKinley's kind of back. It'll be interesting to see how they square off against Massillon at the end of the year. But certainly they've got to fight through the Federal League. It's so good that they are part of the Federal League because back in when your dad and I were in high school in the 90s, I don't believe they weren't part of a conference. They weren't part of the Federal League. So they had to schedule all these games with all these teams from around the state. And they had some really interesting matchups. They play like the Austintown Fitches or Warren Harding or whomever, possibly a St. Ignatius or St. Ed's or something along those lines. And now playing as part of the Federal League, certainly that changes some of the dynamics to play the rest of the teams around Stark County. It really makes it a bigger part of the community there, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. Even like Fitch, like they're really good this year too. So it's interesting because every single team in the Feds is pretty solid except your Eagles. They're
Hey, listen,
they're,
your father's Eagles too. Now be nice. And I guess your uncle as well, right?
yeah.
All right, now come on, let's go. Quit trying to disavow us. Let's go. We're not going to have it. Nobody knows how to do the Eagle Stomp better than the Glen Oak Golden Eagles marching band. So we're not going to have that. So anyway, Taven, other than the high school football for Believe Land Media, uh, you host a podcast called Prospects of the Land with Nate.
Yep.
And Nate was unavailable tonight. Sorry to tell him we say hello. Sorry he couldn't be here. And you got to spend a lot of time going to Akron Rubber Duck games, as you've got the pennant in the background there. Um, but as you reviewed and followed all of the farm teams for the Guardians, you got to know them pretty well. The Lake County Captains. I mean, and what a successful run for Cleveland Guardians farm teams. The Lake County Captains, they win the Midwest League for the first time in 14 years. They took down the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers, 3-game series. They take it 2-1. Final score of game 3, they win 9-4. And then the Rubber Ducks, they were in the playoffs. They fell to the defending champion Erie Seawolves. And now the Columbus Clippers, the AAA team, they're in the International League Championship. They are taking on the Omaha Storm Chasers. So, what did you think about the results for the farm teams? And again, the championship series is going on for Columbus right now. But what did you think about the results there?
So obviously Lake County, they played their asses off. They really they lost a lot of pieces too to Akron, like Parker Messick, Austin Peterson, just a ton of guys like that. But they also got guys like Travis Bazana back in the second half and Ralphie Velasquez. But also they clinched the first half of the season, so they already had a playoff berth. So not a lot to play for in the second half, but they got hot at the right time, and obviously it paid off with them, winning the championship down there when that 3-game series was just amazing, both of them. So
Yeah, I mean, for most of us casual baseball fans, I look at Lake County and I gained a greater awareness this year than I had in the past, just trying to pay attention to these things. But obviously, the big name for most of us is we're looking at it, we're going, okay, Travis Bazana, number 1 draft pick. When is he going to make it all the way up to Cleveland? I think people are hoping maybe by next season at some point, middle of the season or so, maybe he can make it up there. Um, other than Bazana, who else do you have on your radar to climb through the ranks, either to go to Double A, maybe even make it all the way to Triple A, or all the way to Cleveland by next season?
we talked to just guys from Lake County.
Just starting with Lake County, yeah. Let's start with Lake County since we're talking about them. Who from that roster do you think has a chance to make a huge leap?
I would say obviously first round pick from 2 years ago. Now is Ralphie Velasquez.
Okay.
He drafted him out of high school, so he's still a really young kid, and I think that he'll be there. He'll definitely start with Lake County, but he'll definitely be at Akron also next year. They drafted him as a catcher, but using him a lot as a first baseman now. So I would probably say he's the number 1 guy on the radar. Another guy would probably be I want to say number 4 prospect in our system with Angel Hanau, and he's another really young kid, and I think he's going to bring a lot to the table too. He plays with a ton of intensity. He's quick. He can mash home runs. So I would probably go with those 2 guys.
Okay. All right. So we're going to be watching out for them. I think there's the positivity. The positive thing I can take out of it is there's a lot of good things to come down the road for the Guardians. When you're seeing the success in the farm system, that kind of makes you feel better. I know that, and we're going to get around to it. There's a lot of us, me included, who are disappointed in the ownership and the lack of spending on
Oh yeah.
high-priced free agents and talent, and the fact that they rely so heavily on the farm system. And then they get to these points where, unless a guy like a Jose Ramirez gives a hometown discount, they have to send them packing so that they don't lose them for nothing. And we see guys who have left, and some of them have done great, others haven't. But it's certainly tough when that happens. Well, how about the Rubber Ducks? The Rubber Ducks, right up the road there from you, uh, they lose in the playoffs, to the defending champions Seawolves. But on that roster, same question. Who stood out for them? Well, who are we going to be? Who's going to make the leap, the next step next season?
So obviously, big guy that everybody's talking about is Chase DeLauder. He played only like 30 games down there, but he's moving through the system quickly. So if he can just stay healthy, I think he's going to be one. And he was down there earlier. I think they got a lot of good bullpen arms too. They got Bradley Hanner, who just got promoted after the season to Columbus. Lenny Torres, who is another guy that I absolutely love. He's just every time he comes in the ninth, just really putting it down. And then on the bats, really the offensive side, a guy nobody really talks about is Joe Lampe. He was an outfielder who had a pretty solid year this year. Milan Tolentino, he had a really good year this year. And then CJ Kafis, who I think might be the best player in the statistics category for the Guardians in just the minor leagues. In his first year of pro ball, he was just absolutely on fire this year. And then obviously Akron's starting pitching. They were the reason why they went to the playoffs. You have obviously I mentioned Parker Messick and Austin Peterson, who started the year in Lake County, and then a guy who I think is the best pitcher in the entire minor leagues. If you've watched Prospects of the Land, you're gonna know who I'm gonna say. It's Aaron Davenport. That dude's just insane. Every time he goes out there, he led the Eastern League, and it seems like every single category this year. So I would probably go with those guys.
Okay, all right. So we've got a range again. It seems like there are some folks that could really have an impact over the next handful of years as they try to make their way through the farm system, potentially landing in Cleveland. We have certainly seen a number of players hit the Guardians roster this season, getting promoted from AAA Columbus and having an opportunity and taking advantage of that. So right now, the Clippers, they are in the championship series. Last night was game one, and all three games are in Omaha. And one of your favorite pitchers, Doug Nikhazy, was on the mound. When I last saw it, I think they were hanging on in about the fourth or fifth inning. Do you have the final from that, Taven?
Not the exact score, but I know that they pulled it out just barely last night. So they now have a 1-0 lead over Omaha. And Doug Nikhazy was on absolute fire last night. He had 10 strikeouts over 5.5 and 2/3 innings pitched. So that's a huge guy that I think will get the call definitely next in the starting pitching position for the Guardians.
Right. And then Connor Gillespie is starting game two. Any thoughts on Gillespie?
So Gillespie, the only major league time that he saw this year was in the bullpen. So down in the minor leagues, he's a really good arm. I don't necessarily he hasn't figured it all out in the major leagues. I do think that he showed flurries of doing good. The record doesn't really reflect how he pitches down in AAA. He's 5-7 with a 4.05 ERA. So he gives up a fair amount of runs, and the record's not great. But if you watch some of the stuff that he threw, especially in the major leagues out of the bullpen, he can definitely string together anywhere from 2 to 3 innings of a solid start. So.
Okay, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. And I looked at their lineup last night, and I'm like, I actually know almost every one of these players because they were at in Cleveland at some point during the season. Freeman, Rodriguez, Arias, DeLauder. I mean, they got a pretty decent lineup down there. And we sent down, Miles Straw because Quan got activated today. Hey, Miles. Oh yeah, I got something to tell you.
You stink.
Sorry, my bad. No. So Miles Straw sent back. I'm sure he'll be very helpful getting picked off first base.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it pretty much exact like we've been hammering home. I mean, almost everybody on the roster seems like they've gotten some major league time. You have Miles Straw, who just went back down there, and Tyler Freeman, which that's a scary outfield for AAA. You have Estevan Florial, who he was in the big leagues. Jonathan Rodriguez, a dude who's just a AAA all-star. You bring him up to the majors, he struggles a little bit, but he might be the best AAA player of all time. He'll hit like 300 with 30 home runs down in the minor leagues. And then you have Gabriel Arias, guys like that. And then you have Brian Lavastida is another dude. And then you have just even guys who haven't cracked the majors, but they're, 25, 26, guys like Micah Prees and Reynel Delgado, who've had a great great year. So just a really talented Columbus team, just in the hitting aspect.
Right, and will Juan Brito ever? Do you think he's got a chance to crack the majors?
Oh, I like Juan Brito. Everything he did in Akron was solid. I haven't really kept too much up on watching him this season, but in Columbus he's hitting 256 with 21 home runs, so he obviously can hit the long ball pretty well. But I really don't see a world where he definitely gets in over Jimenez, and we have so many shortstops in this system that it's going to be really tough. I don't think he's going to get time really over Rocchio, and then you have Arias, who I think would get the call up again sooner, and then you have Daniel Schneemann, just guys like that, where it's like I don't really think he's going to get a ton of time.
Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the remainder of the championship series there for Columbus, and going forward, who's going to end up making an impact for the Guardians going forward. And still, and this is where we're going to kind of get to next year, talk a little Gardos. The Guardians right now, currently, as I'm looking at it, bottom of the third, up 1-0 over Cincinnati. Guardians, are you believing this? I know you. I heard you just the other day. You had said maybe you predicted 100 wins before the season. Did you predict 100 wins?
So originally I said 102, which is pretty high. But then again, you have Nate, who predicted, I think he said like 65 wins. So two totally different ends of the spectrum with us. But I mean, what are we at right now? 92, 93?
I believe actually, taking a look here, let's pull up the standings right quick. It's 92 or 91.
91. Okay.
67.
I was off by a fair amount, but a lot of people were counting the Guardians out at the beginning of the year. I saw picks for, obviously, the Twins were the front runner, and then I saw picks for Kansas City, which I still am really shocked how they even made the playoffs. If you look at their roster, outside of Bobby Witt and Salvador Perez, there's not really a name like a big name on that team, or really anybody with impressive stats. I mean, everybody's kind of hanging in the 240 range on the offensive side for Kansas City, and then obviously you have Detroit, who they might make a playoff spot. They've gotten hot at the right time. So
Absolutely. No, and I would say this, and I think I heard the announcers and the commentators talk about it. Kansas City has kind of been built along the model of the Guardians, you know, and
yeah,
they have to hit rock bottom. They won a World Series, and then they hit rock bottom. So whereas the Guardians haven't quite had that major fallout, and this was certainly a surprise and has been a surprise. It's been a pleasant surprise for once for us Cleveland sports fans. So the Guardians, they lock up the AL Central this year. Potentially, all right, I'm just going to go out. Should Stephen Vogt be manager of the year?
for sure, 100%. I mean, the dude in his first year led a team to the number 2 seed in baseball. I mean, I don't think it's a question. You could give it to Detroit's manager too.
Him?
He has a solid, yeah, he has a solid case. Obviously, you brought your team from nothing and put it potentially in the playoffs, but I think it's Vogt, no question.
Yeah, I mean the Guardians have fought. They certainly got out ahead early in the season. Up until but from the All-Star break on, they've been kind of up and down, playing 500 or so ball. But the lead, they were tied. Kansas City pulled even, and then the Guardians pulled out a major comeback, huge victory over Kansas City. Kansas City hasn't been the same since. And so the Guardians with the magic number going into last night was 1 to earn the first round bye to go directly to the ALDS. So they have to win 8 games to get to the World Series. And they're going to be tough games. And so taking a look here, Stephen Kwan, as we talked about, return to the lineup tonight. How important is it for the Guardians' success in the playoffs to see Stephen Kwan and the top of the order kind of setting the tables a little bit more like they were early in the season?
I mean, like you said, he's your leadoff guy for a reason. Been on fire ever since he got to Cleveland, so I think he's obviously going to play one of, if not the biggest role for the Guardians. Kind of just getting on base and starting off really strong for him. I want to. Another big key to the playoffs and the run is, can the younger guys really step up? You have guys like obviously Schneeman and um, I'm drawing a blank here on who else. You have younger guys, Noel and Cantillo and Walters, and I think it's really going to be on if those guys can kind of step up and carry their weight in postseason baseball, because that might intimidate some guys. You know, they haven't played postseason baseball in the majors, so you're gonna pretty much have to see how they do.
Right. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. And so if they don't know it, they don't know what to be afraid of. So to your point, I just pulled up the box score. Quan 1 for 2. He led off the game with a home run.
Nice.
So a lot, and a lot was made of before the season. They wanted him to kind of change his swing, get some more pop in the bat. And certainly it wasn't hurting him from the outset. I mean, he was killing it. He was right around 400,
Yeah.
but has severely cooled off, and then had the issues, the back, and so on and so forth. We just need him to hit, if he can hit 300 or right around there in the playoffs, 3 out of every 10 times, go 1 for 3 on the night, get things going. Let's reap some havoc. He's got such a great eye at the plate. He doesn't have to get a hit. He can get a walk. Just get on base and start things up. It makes life hell for opposing pitchers if you can put the pressure on them and make them pitch out of the stretch.
Yeah.
So then we've got, tonight, the starting pitcher, Andrew Walters, he's doing great coming up.
Oh yeah.
Recently, he went 1 2/3 innings, no hits, no earned runs, no strikeouts. He did it in 20 pitches. So he went an inning and 2/3 and 20 pitches. Not bad. Sabrowski with an inning and a third, 3 Ks. And now Cade Smith is in there.
They're throwing in every Akron bullpen guy today.
Yeah, and the bullpen is going to be is really the strength of the Guardians. I of the whole thing, the whole operation. The offense has been up and down. The starting pitching has been patchwork, but the bullpen has held it all together this season for the Guardians, kind of led by Cade Smith and Emmanuel Clase, and Hunter Gaddis has been very good.
Oh yeah.
But I know some people are not fans of, I'd say Sandlin drives people nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you fall on that?
Rightfully so. I mean, he's really inconsistent. His numbers are good, but if you really just kind of watch him, he's a really shaky pitcher. So I would say he really scares me. Tim Herron, shockingly, I mean, he has good numbers, but I feel like if you just throw him in a clutch kind of position, he doesn't deliver all the time. And somebody who I think shouldn't even be on the roster at all, Eli Morgan. I don't know why he's still around, but it seems like every time he goes in with the sideburns now, he's getting rocked for like 8 runs.
So he needs to shave those sideburns, or
He-
something like that. No.
Yeah.
So it'll be very interesting. Do you think Andrew Walters? I think it's a pretty fair to say that he should be on the postseason roster.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he started here in Akron, and we drafted him last year. So that kind of tells you the guy that he is. He's a little on the older side. I think I want to say he spent 2 to 3 years at Miami for baseball. But I mean, the dude's just insane. I mean, his numbers in the minor leagues. So I 100% think that he might even be your 4th option outside of Gaddis, Cade Smith, and Class A in that bullpen.
Okay, so if you Tyson, thank you for chiming in. Eli Morgan is god awful. Yeah, I think we could go with that. Dude, does he deserve this?
You stink.
Oh, okay. All right. Just making sure. I know there's some fans out there that might not think the same, but just again, what did you say?
You stink.
Okay. All right. Just making sure I heard that right. All right. So, as we look to the playoffs now, in all likelihood, the Guardians, we know they can't finish any worse than the 2 seed. There is an outside possibility they could get the number 1 seed, but it's going to take a collapse by the Yankees. Heading into the night, and they hold the tiebreaker. They are, let's take a look here at the league. They are a game and a half better. So technically that's 2.5 games. They will play tomorrow. We will not play. Right now, they are down 3-0 going to the bottom of the first against the Baltimore Orioles. But let's assume we're in the 2 or whatever. Which of the possible opponents do you see as the most favorable and least favorable matchups for the Guardians?
So I'm confident with the team that we have that we can beat anybody really outside of the Yankees. And the only reason I say the Yankees is just because they kind of own us in the postseason. Um, Still can't believe that Francona went with Aaron Savali in game, what was it, 5 in the
Is that a beater?
ALDS or something? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. That was a bit rough. I know that.
That was
I
the
know.
worst decision ever made. I can't stand Savali, but I mean they've owned us for a minute, so I don't want to obviously run into them, but you're gonna have to, in my opinion, if you want to go to the World Series. I really want to play. I would say the Twins because just the record we have against them this year,
Right, and
it's pretty solid.
right, and the Twins right now, as it stands, are on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs. Right now, they've fallen down. They are 2 games back of Detroit. So it would be
Wow.
the 3 wild cards are going to be Baltimore, KC, and Detroit at this moment, with New York, Cleveland, and Houston winning their divisions. And as of this moment, again, taking a look at the standings here, the Astros. So we've got our 3 division winners: New York, Cleveland, Houston. Now the question is the wild cards. Did you think? I mean, who would have thunk it that the Central might have three teams in the playoffs?
Yeah, that's pretty insane. I mean, just kind of crazy if you really think about it, especially from Detroit. I mean, they were going to trade Tarek Skubal at the deadline, which is their obviously ace and
Right.
potential Cy Young winner. So that kind of tells you where they were at and the run that they went on in the second half. But any of those playoff teams I would be comfortable facing. Obviously, Baltimore's the better one, but all those teams are really young. And I know you can say the same thing about us, but I mean, we've had some guys that have been there for a minute. I don't think Detroit's really batting orders anything special. They obviously have really good starting pitching, but I'm trying to think. Would I rather play Detroit or Kansas City?
Right. So right now, here's where it stands. If as of right now, um, the Tigers would play the Astros. The winner of that would play the Guardians. The Royals and the Orioles. Winner of that plays the Yankees. Um, so if you had to choose, so right this season we are 7-6 against Detroit. Against Houston, we've got the last 3 games of the season, so the record may not be truly reflective of how we really match up. We are 1-2 against Houston. Those games were in Houston. Houston certainly has the experience. They've been there before. They've banged on those
Oh
trash
yeah.
cans. They've cheated their way to some World Series titles. Um, and Detroit is Detroit, and then that's just too close. I don't like all those Detroit fans. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm confident obviously if you're playing Detroit, but it's going to be Houston. I have a good feeling it's going to be Houston. And the last 3 games, I mean, you might not have your best lineup out there, so I don't know how much that's really going to show.
Right.
Obviously, you're rooting for Detroit, but like you said, they have a lot of veteran presence on that Houston team. They've all been there. They still have Bregman. They still have Altuve, who's obviously still on fire for them. And so I think it's obviously going to be Houston, and they've owned us in the postseason too.
Right. If I have to see Justin Verlander, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah.
When is that guy going to go away? Go away. I'm tired of you. You are a nemesis, a thorn in the side.
Him and Scherzer, they're gonna go till they're like 80.
Oh my gosh. And that's just crazy because pitchers so often these days they're getting hit with injuries and having to have Tommy John surgery and they don't last that long. And it's kind of crazy to see guys like Scherzer and Verlander who have lasted the amount of time that they have and remain as effective as they are. All right. So let me ask you this. Um, who do you think, or what do you think the rotation is going to be? It certainly seems like you're going to go with Bybee as your game 1 starter. Um, who the most consistent pitcher after Bybee has been Lively. Are we kind of on the same page there?
Yes, because he's been with us all year, but I really think they're going to go with Matthew Boyd
Okay.
in game
And, no,
2.
and that's fair. And that is fair. So you would think Boyd. Then who is your so then if you went Boyd, then Lively. So you think out of if you had a 4-man starting rotation,
Yeah.
you would think Bybee, Boyd, Lively. Then who do you got? Because I'm looking at like what Cobb has the blister. We're waiting for him to come back. Hopefully, he'll get the pitch a little bit here in the last few games. Gavin Williams, who has been captain inconsistency, and
Oh,
Logan
yeah.
Allen. I mean, would we kind of be on the same page if we thought it was Bybee, Lively, Cobb, and Boyd, not in that order necessarily?
So I think Cobb's really inconsistent too. At least what I've seen out of him. I'm not really huge on Cobb, but personally, just because of how good he's been doing lately, I know he's younger on the younger side, but I would like to see Cantillo in that 4 spot.
And that's a good question, a possibility there. And we'll see. What did we say? We think, according to Zach Mizell, I think he might be in a bullpen game, a starter on Friday against Houston. He has been pitching well, but could he be a long reliever?
And I think that's what they're going to use him at. We've seen that Vogt use him as a bullpen guy this year, so I think it'll be Cobb if he's ready to go, and if not Cobb, I think it'll be Gavin Williams just because he's older than the rest of the crowd that you have. I don't think you're going to run with a bullpen game necessarily like tonight at all, over pitching Gavin Williams or something like that. So I think Bybee as the ace is a lock. Boyd and Lively either or at the 2 or 3. Those are locks. The fourth guy's it's pretty up in the air.
Right. And just as an update for those of you watching, I'm seeing right now as of the moment, it's 2-0 Guardians over the Reds in the bottom of the 4th inning. Looks like a triple tonight for Jose Ramirez with a triple and an RBI for Josh Naylor. 108 RBI for Naylor. That's fantastic. Really, he needs to round into form. I mean, if you look at the lineup, we know that we're going to be talking, I guess, infield is set. So we're going to be talking about Jose. For better or worse, we're going to be talking about Rocchio, Himy, and Naylor. In the outfield, you've got Quan in left. Now, who's going in center? Are we going to be, I guess we're going to be looking at, are we going to be talking Schneemann? Is that your thought?
So obviously Schneemann's
or Lane Thomas. Lane Thomas.
So Schneemann's obviously my guy. So if I'd have it my way, it's I don't know, because Schneemann's obviously still a rookie. Lane Thomas, he's caught fire as of late, so I really think it'll be Lane Thomas out in center, and then in the right field spot, I really want to see my boy Will Brennan. I mean, he's obviously a guy who went to the postseason in 22 with Cleveland, and he delivered in some spots. So I think especially if I see Noel in the field, I'm going to lose it. He is the worst fielder I've ever seen in my entire life.
Right. He's going to be a pinch hitter. He is not someone you've got to use him in the right spot. He's got the power. He's got an opportunity to be a game changer. What about Manzardo? Where do you fit him in?
That might be the DH. Yeah, for sure. I think it's between Noel and kind of Manzardo for that designated hitter spot. With this team, maybe David Fry. Obviously,
yeah, and
it's going to be Fry.
Call. It's a very tough call because David Fry was so hot early. He gets to be he makes it to an all-star game. I think he's going to be there. So tonight's lineup, just taking a look at it, you got Quan in left, Thomas in center, Noel in right. But you're thinking that in right field, we might see Brennan or Schneemann, probably, or you might flip-flop. You might put Schneemann center, Thomas right.
I'm cool with either.
Okay, and then the infield as we set the table there with Ramirez, Rocchio, Himy, and Naylor with Manzardo as the DH, Bo Naylor behind the dish. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of Bo Naylor. Do you think maybe Hedgie gets in there for depending upon who the pitcher is?
So obviously Hedges has the worst bat known to man, but behind the dish he makes the pitchers on the mound better, and he's obviously I think one of the best defensive catchers in the league. Obviously, it's the bat that's holding him back. But to get that veteran presence in there, Hedges is obviously a guy who won a World Series last year, which I still can't believe. So I think they're gonna go with Hedges behind the dish for say a series goes maybe 6. I think half the games would be Hedges, and then if it went to a game 7, I think it'd be Hedges again.
Yeah, veteran presence and leadership really makes a difference there. Bo Naylor has potential at the plate. He has not shown it. He has not found a consistent bat. You're not going to get that from Hedges, but Naylor, you were hoping for a lot more at this point. So a lot of people, I want to get your opinion on this. I see a lot of Twitter hate on Brian Rocchio. Where do you fall on Rocchio? Because he has some really good moments in the field specifically, and then he'll do something and you want to tear your hair out.
I love Rocchio just throughout the minors when he was in Akron, when he was in Columbus. Obviously, it's the bat that really hasn't came around for him yet, but we've seen that with other guys like Tyler Freeman, and Schneeman's sort of struggled too, just kind of hitting in the very low 200s. But obviously, there's a lot to love from Rocchio in the field. I think, obviously, like I said, the bat's kind of what's holding them back. But I don't see another option to put at short, especially in the playoffs. I don't see a guy that could really take that spot from Rocchio, who's been playing it all season. So.
All right, fair enough there. But at least it sounds like it won't be Miles Straw.
You stink.
Okay, will you stop? Will you stop? No. I'm going to tell you. No, you don't tell me.
You stink.
I don't stink. You stink. All right, so Miles Straw back down to the minors. All right, Guardians top of the 5th, leading it 2-0. Well, let's move on to the factory of sadness, as it were. The Browns.
Yeah.
Last year, or was it last year, or which clown was it that said? I think it was actually the Steelers. The Browns is the Browns, and then the Browns went out and kicked their butts. And last year was
Jamar Chase.
Maybe? Did he say that one as well as the Elves? I don't know. An elf, but they did enough talking. But the Browns, well, kind of are the Browns again this season. Sunday was disgraceful. Sunday was another absolute cluster fudge. You were there. You saw it. So week 1, they come out. They get embarrassed by Dallas. Week 2, they bounce back. They look to change the game plan. They hold on. They eke out the victory over Jacksonville. Actually should have been a bigger victory, but they were lucky to get out of there with a win. A win's a win, right?
Yeah.
So you come back and you're taking on the Giants. And quite frankly, the Giants, well, yeah.
They're the second worst team in football outside of Carolina. It's the Giants.
Yeah, they've been struggling, and Danny Dimes has not been what they had hoped.
Not at all.
I guess Baker Mayfield was kind of right about how he was surprised how high Danny Dimes got picked. But the Browns made him look like a Hall of Famer.
And yeah, he made a couple of good throws, especially to Neighbors. So.
Oh, and Malik Neighbors is phenomenal.
Oh, I love him. I think he might be from where we picked him, he looks a lot like OBJ. Same college, around the same pick.
There's a lot of good receivers from LSU. And the question will be the longevity. Does he get bit by the injury bug? What's he going to do? There are so many good receivers out there. And I heard this talked about with the Browns as we kind of have dissected and analysts have dissected where they're at. We don't have as great. It was great to see Amari Cooper. If you had to pick out one positive from Sunday, I'd say Amari Cooper. He finally showed up and showed out and made some phenomenal catches in an otherwise lackluster performance for the Browns. And I don't know if Judy will ever be a number 1 receiver. Maybe that's what they're hoping, but he hasn't shown that so far. But the Browns don't have that number 1 guy right now, like a Jefferson, a Chase, to name a few. I mean, there's Amon-Ra St. Brown. I can't even think of all the guys who come through the league and beat our asses, So you were there. You were at the game. As we've discussed, with your fandom of the Giants as well, other than when they're playing against the Browns. I mean, what did you see out there, good, bad, or indifferent, in the Browns' performance?
Obviously Cooper, he was the main guy, and if he doesn't play, I don't think the Browns get on the board. The game started with the Giants fumble, and I thought it was going to be a long one for the Giants. Daniel Jones threw a pick, which I thought had a couple more in the tank, but it got called back. So he played one of his better games. But yeah, I mean the defense just didn't look the greatest at all either for the Browns, and obviously Deshaun, he didn't look good at all. I don't think he's looked good in a game since Jacksonville game. He looked average at best, but I think which is funny because in our section, and not even in our section, it was like the entire stadium broke out into a Jameis Winston chant around the third quarter.
Oh,
So nobody wants Watson. There's a couple people behind us were yelling like, "Oh, stay down" when Watson would go down, and I mean that kind of tells you a lot about
and
the
is that, do
situation.
you think, and I ask you this because you're younger than I am, and I like to get the perspective of people who are younger. I can ask my son, but he doesn't even, he's even a couple years younger than you. But what is the perception of Deshaun Watson? Do you think that the disdain for him is the football side of things or the personal side of things, or can you not separate the two?
I think it's the personal side, but then top that off with him playing like complete trash over the last 2 years and always being injured. I think that factors it in even more, and it's just kind of built on top of each other. I was watching a Barstool podcast the other day, and somebody said, "Could you make the case now that Deshaun Watson is a better human being than football player?"
Oh no, oh no.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
I mean, that's pretty much what I want to say at this point. I know that it's hard to do revisionist history. And we talked about earlier, we were talking about the Guardians and their ownership and their willingness to spend. On the other side of the end of the spectrum, you've got an ownership group, the Haslams. They've got the money, and they spent the money. They went all in on this, and I would like to look back and kind of get a better understanding of whose decision this was to go all in on Watson. Whose idea was it? They clearly were. They were out on Baker. They
Yeah.
were out on him. They had had enough of it, and we probably don't know the half of what went on in the locker room. But the fact that allegedly someone said we need an adult in the room, it kind of says a lot there. But Watson has not lived up to the hype, in my opinion. Barring a miraculous turnaround this season, I think that one way or another, whether you can get out of his contract or not, which I don't think they're going to be able to, even though there's this pending possible, the civil lawsuit, where this person might be talking to the league. Who knows what could happen? Let's just say that goes nowhere, and you've got him on the roster. You're stuck with his contract. I am of the opinion that unless he has a miraculous turnaround, you draft rookie quarterback 1 in the first round if it's not a reach, because I don't think we're making the playoffs. And you take a left tackle with your second pick.
Yeah, I mean, do you pretty where it stands? I mean, you're 1-2, so obviously just a little sample size of the season. Do you think that we should kind of blow it all up and kind of tank this season, or do you think just kind of hang in there?
It's a bad. All right, so technically there are some sites, and they were discussing this on the morning radio, Cleveland sports radio, that on at least one site, technically speaking, the Browns would have the last wild card spot right now. I mean, the AFC is a disaster. How many teams are 1-2? Baltimore's 1-2.
Cincinnati's 0-3.
0-3, right. So a lot of things can happen. It is a long season. I think everybody's just angry right now. There is a lot of anger. And the offensive line injuries, they really have sidetracked things. And losing, so you finally see Wills on the field on Sunday. He doesn't look right. He looks like he's coming off of a long layoff and injury. And then he's terrible. Conklin gets the hamstring right before, on Friday after practice or in practice. So he's out. DeJuan Jones still looks hampered by his knee recovery from knee surgery, although he's been playing. Some have said he looks heavier than he was last season. That might have to do with the time he had to take in rehabbing with the knee injury. Not so sure exactly what's going on there. You lose Teller. He's on the IR. You end up sliding Batonio to left tackle, Posick to left guard, Harris plays center, then Zach Zinter steps in, and I'm not upset about that. I think Zach Zinter, he was a steal in the draft.
Yeah, he was going to be a first-round pick before he blew out his knee in the Ohio State game. That was an absolute steal. Dude was an All-American, so.
Exactly. And Tyson, give me Sanders or Milrow. I'd take Milrow. I don't like Sanders, but that's more so because I don't like Dion.
I don't think you're going to get a high enough pick, but I want Quinn Ewers, either on my Giants or the Browns.
Right. I would take Ewers at this juncture. That would be the guy I am looking at. So the offensive line is an absolute disaster. Losing Bill Callahan to go coach with his son with the Titans is a travesty. It has killed this team. He worked them hard.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So anyway, the Browns are just a mess. And the chance though is this. They're playing the Raiders this week. They've got a chance to get right. Or at least look right for 1 week and quiet things down a little bit. It's not about looking pretty and losing. You can look ugly and win, and I don't care. That's all it takes. And right now, you've got to get everybody on the same page. Taking a look here real quick, you've got a mess in Las Vegas. The Raiders got their butts kicked by Andy Dalton and the Panthers. I mean, that is terrible. And you got Antonio Pierce. He's losing his mind as a young rookie head. He's not technically a rookie head coach, but he's losing his mind out there. So let's look at this here, Taven. On offense, the Browns are 31st in the league in yards per game, 248. 30th in passing at 152.3. And the chart was like they were somewhere in the middle, probably in the 20s in rushing, 95.7 per game. And that's not fantastic. Ford, I think, was on the injury report, maybe with a knee. Don't know what his status is. Still, as of this time, haven't ruled Njoku out yet, but I would highly doubt he would be able to go. And we're only scoring 16.7 points per game. That's not going to cut it. On the defense, 12th in the league in yards per game given up, 15th in passing, 13th in rushing, 20th in points per game. They had a real chance on Sunday. They started off slow, but they clamped down in the second half, only giving up the 21 points. And 7 of those points were on a very short field. That makes a huge difference there. Now, over on the Raiders side, I mean, they are 21st in offense. So they've got us in yards per game. But they average 295.7 total yards per game, 244.7 in the air, only 51 yards on the ground per game. They are dead last. Dead last. We got to stop the run. You stop the run, and you
let Devin Singletary explode on you. That's not good, and that's coming from a Giants fan. So.
Right. And I mean, so I think a lot of that has to do with, so first of all, we got Myles Garrett banged up. And so he's playing a lower percentage of snaps, but you still got to control. I think here also we have to watch for Minshew has killed the Browns with his mobility. So we've got to contain him. And we can't let Devontae Adams is still a threat. They've got Brock Bowers from Georgia, rookie out of Georgia. I mean, they've got some playmakers, so we can't get beat being over aggressive. I think we've got the talent there, but we'll see. On the defensive side of things, it doesn't get much better for the Raiders. They are 30th in yards per game given up, 378.7, 23rd in passing, 29th against the rush. So the Browns need to establish the ground game, as hard as that is, and they are allowing 27 points per game. They're leading, Gardner Minshew, taking a look here at how the battle of terrible quarterbacks, 44.1 QBR. Watson, 30th at 22.5. The only quarterback worse than Watson, Bryce Young, who got benched. And thankfully, I guess Crosby is slowed down a little bit by an injury, but he can be a menace. Robert Spillane, he kind of was a pain in the tuchus, when he played in Pittsburgh, and he's still a pain in the rear end. He's 7th in the NFL in tackles, the linebacker for the Raiders. So I wanted to quickly go through some quotes here from today's media availability. First, let's take a listen here to Deshaun Watson talking about the communication with the offensive line.
How to work together, how's you with the offensive line because guys are in and out like that to create that just that communication that you have with them.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just really just making sure we're on the same page. So if we're all on the same page, then we just follow our basic rules and fundamentals, and we then after that, you just got to win your matchup, and just being able to exactly where certain guys on defense are. And how we want to protect it up, and then pretty much go from there. So communication is always key, regardless who's out there or not.
So that sounds to me like you are not prepared. You were not prepared. You, the offensive line, I understand we've got injuries, but you were not prepared. You had no stinking clue what you were doing out there. You heard him after the game. Oh, they gave us some looks we weren't expecting. We'll figure it out on the sideline. You got freaking tablets there.
Right.
You're down with the coaches in between. Figure it out. Do something. I'm losing my mind listening to this nonsense. All right, now we talk about Ken Dorsey and his new offense.
How much do you think the slow start for the offense is trying to learn the new offense that you guys are running?
I'm not sure on that. We just got to continue to just start fast, and when we do, we got to continue to pick up speed. We can't slow down. So that's the only thing I can say about that.
Do you think it has anything to do?
Okay, then you don't know. You know what your new offense is? It sucks. Okay, it sucks. Whoever hired that guy, this is what I say to him.
You're fired.
Yeah, you're fired.
You stink.
Yes, get out of here, Ken Dorsey. You suck. This offense is terrible. I know people give Kevin Stefanski crap for his play calls, and they call it the cheesecake, the Denny's menu, or whatever it is. But he's managed to figure out how to get two teams to the playoffs, patchworking together 5 quarterbacks last season. This is crazy. And through COVID and all that, cut the crap out. All right, next. So they follow up with him talking about the concerns with the offensive line. Again, we're talking about continuity here. Nobody played in the preseason. Nobody played. We had to bubble wrap them, and now they're all injured. So let's take a listen here to what Chucklehead has to say about this.
Do with it?
I don't know.
So when you talk about the communication with the offensive line, how much do you think that is responsible or important it is when you're talking about picking up those blitzes that maybe you don't expect going into a game and the team blitzes you a lot like the Giants did? How much of that is being on that same page with that line?
I mean, yeah, we just all got to see it through the same eyes and through the same scope, and that's where you come to the sideline, you adjust. You watch, you look at the tablet, seeing what they're doing, and you try to pick it up. The Giants did a good job of mixing up pressures when they brought it, and we just didn't capitalize on that. So, we just gotta settle in and be able to make those adjustments. There's going each and every week. There's going to always be a new wrinkle to a blitz that a team showed, but until we pick it up, we might see that. So we just got to continue to just keep our eyes and head up and communicate throughout the whole process and try to make sure we, seeing everything through the same eyes.
Now, next, there's a question. So again, more of this nonsense. More of this nonsense. When I hear this, my blood boils because clearly it sounds like they're not on the same page. And why is that? I want to get to the root of the problem. What is going on in the building? Is the offensive line pissed with Deshaun? Have they thrown in a towel?
I think it could be a little bit of both. I mean, then again, it's a lot on Deshaun. You see him hit his spin cycle, it seems like, and takes 10 minutes to get the ball out. So Giants sacked him 8 times, which is, I mean, the Giants have, in my opinion, definitely a top 3 defensive line with Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Brian Burns. But 8 times is a lot.
The offensive line sucked. All right. The injuries didn't help, but they were clueless out there. So let's talk about it. He's talking about him and not getting the ball out quicker. Next quote.
I think last week you said that, you're always going to trust your instincts and, we know that you were going to extend some plays and whatnot. But given the injuries on the offensive line and the fact that teams are, blitzing you a lot more, do you think that you need to, make it a point to get the ball out of your hands a little bit quicker?
Well, we got to all be on the same page. It depends on the blitz, too. It might be a man-covered blitz. It might be a zone pressure blitz. It just depends on the blitz. So just because the ball is getting out of my hands fast doesn't mean that we're going to be explosive or not. You know, so sometimes we might have the protection and the guys to pick it up. We just got to block it up. The routes might be a little bit different. It might not be quick game on the blitzes. It might be deep shots that we did last week and the previous week before, and we just didn't pick up, you know, those blitz. So it just depends on the route concept.
So again, I mean, it seems like it's just a bunch of. I think we're all fed up with it. Can we all just agree? I think we're just fed up with it. So no matter what he says, it's going to come out badly. And we're all going to see it as an excuse, even though there is some merit in it about knowing the blitzes, knowing the routes, and so on. And we don't know that. And all we can do is what we're seeing without all the inside information on the play call and such. But I just feel like, you know, to us, we watched Joe Flacco waltz in last year off the couch and run the Stefanski offense flawlessly. I mean, yeah, he threw some picks, but he had the team moving.
Yeah. I think everybody's kind of just fed up with the fact that you gave up 3 first-rounders for a guy who's barely played, and when he does, he's nowhere near what he was down in Houston.
Right. And I think, and so that's kind of a compound problem where the fact that he hasn't played has really partially, you know, obviously the legal issues, but the injury certainly hasn't helped. So really it's been, I mean, you think he had a year where he didn't play in Houston. Then he comes to the Browns, only plays 6 games with a suspension. And so then last year he plays, I think, with 5 games or something along those lines before he ends up getting injured. It's really tough to say. So I think we're all just kind of fed up and going, God, you know, we want to see him play and we wonder about the draft capital and what we might have had. Now, I don't know what the quarterback situation would be like because I don't think they were going to stick with Baker. I don't think that was going to happen. So what would you have done differently? Would you have all those people that were traded that same year ended up terrible? None of I think Watson might be the only person who's on the same team that made a big acquisition. Ryan played 1 year for the Colts and retired. I can't even think. I looked this up before, you know, a few weeks ago. I don't remember all the other guys, but none of the other guys are even playing for the same team. So the next thing, there was a question asking about like anything that Watson himself thought he could do better after watching the tape. So let's take a listen to this.
After watching the tape, what was one thing that you took away that you yourself could do better from an offensive perspective?
As far as just individually or just overall offense? If I had to pick something, I would probably say just continue to just get on the same page with the receivers. You know, to the normal eye of a fan, you know, it might seem like, you know, a pass was offered, you know, things like that. You know, I'm the type of player and quarterback that I can adjust and make every throw, regardless if, you know, we're not on the same page. But I think just continue to get on the same page in certain situations. I think that's the biggest thing. So if that's a little extra film work with the receivers, extra walkthroughs, just communicating on the sideline a little bit better, all those things.
All right, Captain Obvious. Come on, Captain Obvious. I mean, that is the most painful question ever. You haven't experienced this maybe yet, Taven. Maybe you have, where you go to a job interview and they're like, so what's your biggest weakness? And you are sitting there sweating bullets. It sounded like what he was trying to do, answer that question here. Now, if you've had a chance this afternoon or this evening to be on Twitter, this has the internet broken. This has the internet broken. The question about the film clip that is going out since Sunday, the 4th and 1, where the Browns, Watson ended up scrambling, coming up short. And everybody says there was Jordan Akins on the right. He was wide ass open. Why didn't you throw it, et cetera? So let's take a listen to his answer to this. And then I'm going to play you a clip, if I've got it pulled up right, of a question that was asked of Jordan Akins about it. And let's compare and contrast and see what they say about that.
Using that 4th and 1 play where it seemed like Jordan was open and you ran the ball to make the case that you're not seeing the field well this season. So my question to you is, are you seeing the field well? And maybe what are other people not seeing on that particular play?
Because other people are not in the film room. so that not everyone know exactly what the read was. That was a decoy. So that's the difference. Everyone can pause the tape and say, hey, he should have thrown it here, should have thrown it here. Every quarterback deal with that. So if you choose one play and that's the play out of the whole game that everyone is calling, then so be it. It is what it is. No one's in those film rooms. No one is making those decisions. So I go based off of what is Ken Dorsey and Kevin Stefanski is saying. And, on that decision, they made a good play. They got jammed up on the slant. That's what we did it. The previous time when we scored a touchdown, I did the same as that read, and I hit Jerry. So, man, did I see it wrong then? So for me, it's just, like I said before, it's just I go based off what Kevin and Ken is making those decisions and how they're grading me on that.
So I listen to this, and he says, no, it wasn't my fault. There was a decoy. Let's go over, if I can, I'd like to pull up Jordan Akins. Let's hear what he said.
I mean, it's RPO. At the end of the day, he can give it. He can pass it. All of us was in the right positions. When it come down to that play, we just trust Deshaun to make the best play. Have the best outcome of that play. Like I said, that defense stunted so much. And even sometimes they P drop. So it can be confusing. Just can't put it all on Deshaun. We definitely wish we could have that play back, but at the end of the day, it is an RPO. So we can either run it or he can throw it. And, next time we'll execute it.
Now, he's not saying that the throw should have been to him per se, but he is saying it was an RPO, a run pass option. He could have thrown the ball. Was he only looking for the slant? Was Deshaun only looking for the slant and didn't make all of his reads? I think that two things can be true at the same time, and it's possible that maybe his third option or whatever it was Akins out to the right. But his responses and his defensiveness are just tired. I'm tired of it. It's crazy. Because that didn't what he said did not sound like what Watson said.
No, I mean, I think, he's just coming up with excuses just for, and as an NFL quarterback, even if the slant maybe had been the first option and Atkins is the third option, you still have to see that. So
exactly. And now, so here's where I will give him a bit of a benefit of the doubt. And it's a very tough situation to be in. He's getting his butt whipped all day long. The offensive line looked like Swiss cheese. And he won't admit it, and no one will say it. They asked Stefanski about mental, etc. No one is saying that he's having any issues like that, but he's getting killed. Some of it's him holding on to the ball. Some of it is the offensive line stinking up the joint. And that has to do with game plan. Like, I think a question was asked earlier in the week, maybe on Monday, about why Stefanski didn't go to the jumbo package, didn't do things. And he said injury kind of dictated that. And, even at the beginning of the game, the fact they were so thin at offensive line. Factory of Sadness commenting, there's no need to analyze. He's not the quarterback. Cut losses and move on. Unfortunately, the earliest I think we can cut that loss. Oh, so I guess there's two scenarios. One, we could bench his ass, which I think if he doesn't play well soon, to not allow the season to get away, you bench him. Two is, as we discussed earlier, you wait until the first round and you draft your quarterback then. You still have Watson on the roster because you can't get rid of him. I think it hurts the salary even worse if you try to cut bait on him. He'd just be a very expensive backup, a real pain in the rear end, dressing up like I saw someone say his outfit on Sunday looked like he was dressed up as a pack of Newport cigarettes. 3 road games in a row now with Vegas. Then we're going to be playing the Commanders and then the Eagles. Commanders game on the schedule, you thought at the outset, hey, that might be easy. Because Jaden Daniels is looking pretty good. I'm a little bit concerned that, as Factory of Sadness says, we could be looking at 0-3. It's crucial to win here on Sunday against the Raiders. I could pull out some Stefanski stuff. it wasn't a lot that he really said that added anything. Although one question that they did ask him was about the offense and Ken Dorsey. So let me find that clip right quick here because I thought the question was whether the slow start had anything to do with incorporating Ken Dorsey's offense in it. Let's take a listen.
Yes.
Is a slow start on offense, Kevin, anything to do with trying to incorporate the new offense with Ken Dorsey?
Yeah, I don't think that's fair. I think we need to play better. I need to coach better, and we will.
It's very fair. It's very fair. People are paying a lot of money to come and watch your sorry butt on the sidelines and this chucklehead. Who decided to hire this guy? Who? He leaves Buffalo and magically they're better? You had a good offense and you are trying to cram this new thing onto the field just to fit Deshaun Watson, and he stinks. He stinks.
You stink.
Yes, you do stink, and
you're fired.
Yeah, get out. You're done. All right, I'm sick of this guy. So I've lost it. I'm at my wit's end here with the Browns, and I'm supposed to go to the game up in D.C. With my co-host Mike, and I got a bad feeling about that. This is a must-win on Sunday for the Browns, and I don't know. Do you think they have a legitimate shot, or are they going to just come out and fall flat once again? What do you think?
I think it's not what everybody wants to hear, but I think you got to tank this season just to get a quarterback. I mean, Deshaun's obviously not working. You have too many injuries to the O-line, and I don't know. I'd probably deal Cooper too, just because of the fact that he kind of won it out after the trade rumors for Ayuk. So
that would take an injury on somebody else's roster because he would be valuable. He would be valuable. You kind of move on from him. You've got Jerry Jeudy locked up. But again, all right, so let me throw this out there, Taven. Now, right now, we're dealing with a Myles Garrett situation with him being injured. It's not only his feet, which he said are partially something he had as a child. And then he's also got, I think they said, an Achilles and maybe his ankle. But I mean, he's banged up. Yeah, going to the Bengals game, that's going to be miserable. That's going to be a real battle of crap. I mean, the Bengals offensively look all right. Their defense is hideous. They stunk. I think Jaden Daniels and the Commanders are pretty good, or better than they have been. But that was embarrassing. That was no good. The guy, what he had, like 90% pass, completion percentage. They never punted. That's bad. It's just not good. We shall see. The Browns might have Nick Chubb coming back at some point. I don't know how effective he'll be. And the second half of the season is the harder part of the schedule for the Browns, clearly. Everybody looked, if you played the schedule game, you looked at this and you thought, man, if they can get out to a 3-1, 4-1 start, man, that'd be great. That'd be gravy. We will be lucky to be 2-3, and at best, of course, 3-2 after the first 5 weeks. Yeah, I would not. It would suck to watch it, to see another year wasted for guys like Garrett and Ward and, to an extent, Chubb and Batonio and so on and so forth. Yep. Hey, there it is. Now, didn't we just say made him look like the Super Bowl MVP? Exactly. Hall of Fame there. It would suck to lose another year of that. I don't think that people who are blaming Stefanski are correct. I think that he has shown and proven he's gained some goodwill and a little favor because of what he has done in past situations. Look at the quarterbacks he has made look good in his system. Dating back to Minnesota, he makes Case Keenum look good. He comes to Cleveland. He did make, for the most part, for a while there, he made Baker look good. He had backups like Nick Mullins. We also had Case Keenum here. He gets PJ Walker to win a game. He gets DTR to win a game last year. Flacco comes in and looks amazing in the offense. And Jacoby Brissett, for what it's worth, he looked pretty good under the system. but for whatever reason, they cannot make Deshaun Watson look good. And I think his ceiling, which once people might have thought was like way up high, is never going to be there. The best we're going to get from him is mediocre. And one way or another, we need to draft our future quarterback.
100%. I mean, his prime was obviously in Houston, dude. Look, he was the top 5 quarterback at the time, and now nobody wants him here. So,
yeah, and as Factory of Sadness chimes in, I love it. It is. It's true. Browns will always have a Joe Thomas scenario, wasted talent. So, with all that in mind, I don't know what's going to happen on Sunday. At least we've got the Guardians, and
Yeah.
hey, the Cavs season starts soon, and I'm pretty pumped for that. And Tyson, you'll take Vrabel right now. I like Vrabel as a tough guy. I wouldn't mind him as a coach, but I don't think Stefanski is 100% to blame. I wonder who made some of these decisions to make the changes on the offensive staff. Did they basically push him and say, look, we've got to do whatever we need to? We were all in on Watson, so we're going to go to this guy. He was good with some other dudes. And, he was a quarterback coach for Cam Newton. He had some good seasons with Josh Allen. But, yeah, I think that Ohio State broke him, when he was quarterback at Miami. But anyway, so, yeah, bottom line, I as I said on Twitter, and this is I want to close things out here this evening with this. And thank you, Mike Pellegrini, for hopping on. Appreciate you being with us as always. You're up late. It's only I don't know 1 a.m. in the UK. It's 1 a.m. in UK here. So here's what I'll say, Taven. At this juncture, I'm sick of hearing excuses. No more. I don't care. I don't care why something went wrong. Fix it. Fix it. Don't tell me what's wrong. Tell me what you're going to do to fix it. Show me. Don't just tell me, show me. I think Watson is a big, giant piece of crap as a person. I will not root for that chucklehead. I will root for the team to do well, but I am not a fan of his. He's got a lot to prove. He has done some shady things. He carries himself like a real, I don't know. He thinks he's a lot better than he is. A lot of, all about me kind of guy. I don't like it. I don't like it, and he's not worth the trouble. It's not worth the drama. I will be very happy when he's gone. I'd look for it. Can we get Charlie Fry back here? Where's Brandon Whedon? Please give me Brandon Whedon stuck under a flag. Yeah. And Mike, he says Watson never be the guy. Can't even manage a game, and he can't manage his life. The guy can't manage his life. He's a petulant child. He's got a bunch of handlers around him, and then he comes up on the internet and tries to be Leroy Bickerstaff. Screw you. Get out. Just get out. I'm tired of the guy. And so for all the people that sit there and fight online, I don't care. Shut up. Just shut up. I want him gone, but I'm going to root for my team. And I'm not going to, whatever he says, I need to block out the noise. So that's where I'm coming from. And that's what has me going nuCLEar. Taven, I don't know. Do you got anything strong you're feeling? Do you have anything that's got you going nuCLEar this week? It's got to be that math test, right?
It's the Ducks, just the way they lost. I mean, it was a diving catch by their left fielder, Eries, and if he didn't make that catch, we would have tied the game. So I think that's got me going nuCLEar.
Oh, dang, man. Well, guys, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Mike, Tyson, Factory of Sadness, thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it as always. Taven, thank you so much for being here. Loved having you on. Sorry that Nate couldn't be on, but we will have to have you guys both on. Looking forward to the baseball playoffs. Love your analysis. Folks, be sure to follow Prospects of the Land. Follow Taven on Twitter, on social media, and follow Believe Land Media. Taven, why don't you give out your information so that folks know where to find you?
So it's at Ducks fan on Twitter and at Quackering Coverage on Instagram. So a lot of prospect stuff we're doing, and next week's going to be a big show on Monday with the Clippers playoffs ending. So
fantastic. Again, thank you so much for being with me, Taven.
yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yes, have a wonderful evening, and we will return next week as hopefully Mike will make it back from out of the country from his work assignment, and we'll hopefully have more good news to talk about as we'll be approaching the Guardians playoffs, and we'll have to recap probably not fun stuff from Las Vegas. It won't be as fun for us here as the people who are hanging out in Vegas. Anyway, so for Taven McCulley, I'm Ethan Greenberg. You've been watching Going